Hello, everybody. I apologize. I'm a little bit I'll just hold a hand up here. That helps. I'm a little in shadow today. Cannot figure out my uh, camcorder here. But anyway, we are very excited to be here for this Coach's Corner meeting. I'm obviously here with Heather and Jill. And we are going to share as much as we can share during this time with you. One of the things I always love to do in these meetings as we get started is to have everyone who can pop into the chat and let us know where you are. It's always fun to see where people are joining in from today. So that's always a cool thing to get started with. So, we are going to cover a specific topic today, and we're each going to share some thoughts and share some ideas with you. But we're going to talk about something that almost everyone experiences, sometimes panic about, get frustrated by, and try and figure out what to do. So we are going to talk about breaking plateaus. That time when the scale's been moving, you've been experiencing a lot of good changes, and then all of a sudden it kind of looks like it flatlines and it stays there for a while. Now, some people think a plateau is 2 days. That is not a plateau. That's just life. But if you're staying at that same place, maybe for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, 3 months, then we're kind of starting to talk about might be a plateau. So we're going to talk a little bit about some thoughts about how to help you with plateaus. All right, Jill or Heather, one of you want to hop in first since I've been talking already?
Go ahead, Jill. Get us started
Sure.
today.
All right. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you again for a coach's corner. But yeah, this is a topic that I know we've all dealt with, and we deal with it a lot as coaches working with our clients. And it can be very frustrating, and clients, we all get really upset about it. But there's so many things we have to look at. It's not just one simple thing. But the one thing I will always say that it can really help is we need to look at our consistency. Are we really following our plan? Are we really being consistent? Are these little things sneaking back in? Are we fasting? We've got to look at that and really be honest with ourselves as to what is going on. And so I would say that's step number one is looking at that, being really honest with ourselves and with what's going on, even maybe getting, I maybe weigh and measure a little bit. I'll do that just a tad bit just to make sure, am I overeating or am I undereating? And yes, we can undereat and cause a
Mhm.
plateau. Our body needs nutrients. And when we really starve ourselves, you hear us say all the time, this isn't about calories. It's not about calorie restriction. So we've got to make sure we're really in line with what we need to be doing. So that's where I'm going to start off, is saying that's the first place I'm going to recommend people look at. Heather, what do you think? What do you think?
Oh, Jill, I heard you being so nice. You're like, I might maybe perhaps consider measuring a scotch, a tiny little girl. No, that's how I used to be. Now I'm like, you got to measure it. You got to look at that. I think you're absolutely right that, sometimes what got us here won't get us there. So a lot of times people are eating in such a way that when they first start fasting, they get, the ball rolling, everything looks great, and then they hit a wall and they're like, I'm doing everything exactly the same. Yup, you're doing everything exactly the same. And now your body is acclimated. And so you're going to just stay right where you are and spin your wheels. You need to switch it up a little bit. And so sometimes people, get hyper fixated on switching up the fasting regimen, right? So I got to go from 342s, then I got to do some 66s, and I need a 5 day. Settle down, just settle down. Maybe not, right? What you recommended, which is of course exactly what I recommended, is let's make sure that the food isn't the problem because frankly, the food is what got us in trouble in the first place. The food is what's going to get us out of trouble. The food is what's going to keep us out of trouble. So my money is always on what's going on with the food, and let's do a little look at that. Now, in the last hour, I was with a client talking about tracking and measuring because she did a 342 week, didn't see any movement on the scale. Again, not a plateau 1 week, but if you've got a bunch of weight to lose and you're not seeing anything at all, okay, let's just look at it. Let's just look. And yes, let's measure, let's weigh, let's really be diligent about it because aren't you worth it? Aren't you worth that effort? Isn't it, kind of a reasonable expectation to say, gosh, golly, this thing isn't working for me. I'm not eating 3 freaking days a week. Shouldn't I diagnose why that's not working before I just keep spinning my wheels indefinitely? So yeah, I want to double down with what you said about self-diagnosing. And while it is not about calories, we certainly don't want to be, kind of fall into being calorie counters and restrictors. There is absolutely, kind of some reality check that needs to be done on our eating days because sometimes we pregame that fast, right? We eat a whole lot of foods in preparation to not eat, and then after we eat a whole bunch because we just didn't eat, and thereby erasing any possibility of weight loss. So I have seen countless clients that say, well, I don't have to count calories because I'm fasting, and they're eating an immense amount of food both before and after the fast, and that's just not conducive to weight loss.
All right, and I'm going to take a third route to this because I think another way to look at it for people is, do I want to change something about my fasting? Because that's almost always the first lever people think they should address. And so I love that Heather and Jill first started with other things, because it doesn't always mean you just need to fast more, fast more, fast more. And that's often the mindset that people get kind of stuck in. So I encourage to think about, do I want to tweak the fasting dial a little bit? And sometimes it means going up a little bit. Maybe I've been doing 24s. What if I start some experimenting with some 16-30 hours, getting a little beyond the 24? What if I move up to some days, complete days where I don't eat and move up to a 36 or a 42 or something? But here's the little trick that sometimes works that I think always kind of surprises people. What if maybe I need to dial down a little bit, back off for a little while, stay consistent with the foods that nurture me and work for my body, stay consistent with time restricted eating or eating only meals. And then after a week or two of that, dial back up again. And lo and behold, sometimes the body starts to kind of releasing some body fat again. So sometimes we need to jog it a little bit, dialing up a little, dialing back a little. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a big challenge in the community. And one week, Megan encouraged people to dial up their fasting dial. And everyone buckled down and dialed up. And then the next week, she said, okay, now I want you to dial down. And you would have thought we asked people to, I don't know, donate a kidney or something. Like, what? Dial down? No way. And it was really helpful for people, one, to get to experience that, but two, to see that sometimes easing up a little bit, not going crazy with our food, but easing up on the fasting a little bit, and then coming back to their kind of normal fasting level helped the body to shift.
Right? Like we have this 5-day reset every month in the community, and everybody's so excited to be a part of that and feel like we're all doing the same thing. It's a fun little party. But like you said, then it's like, okay, now let's practice probably what's more, kind of like long term, what is a more essential skill, which is TRE, right? We're going to be doing a whole lot more days of TRE than we are 5 days. And then where's the excitement? Who's excited by that, right? We probably wouldn't get as much enthusiasm going because it doesn't sound like this big feat when really that is the feat, right? Jill started us with that. The consistency that is required for weight loss and weight maintenance is all the foundation to all of it is consistency, specifically consistent with our way of eating and our time restricted eating. And so if we don't have those two pieces in play, we are not going to see progress. We are going to spin our wheels.
The other big piece I want to emphasize is, and I know everyone has their own relationship with the scale, but what I want to encourage is sometimes we might need to take our focus off of that relationship a little bit and focus on some other things. So, for example, a few years ago, I was working with a client and she was doing great. And one time she came to a meeting and she was spitting mad, like she was so mad. I wanted to pretend that my computer wasn't working and I had to turn it off or something, but she was mad. And she said, Terry, this isn't working. The scale's not moving. And I'm doing all the fasting you told me to do. And I'm eating the foods that you told me to eat. And I'm not losing any more weight. So I scrolled up into my notes and I checked some facts and I came back and I said, hey, I just want to check with you. When we first started working together, did you tell me that all of your tops were size extra large? She said, yes. And last time we met, did you tell me that you had to get all new shirts and they were all size medium? And her face lit up and she was so happy. And she said, yes, isn't that amazing? But Terry, the scale's not moving now. And so, what I encourage is sometimes when the scale's not moving, look for some other things. Her body was still changing. I had it happen again recently. A client I've been working with for a while now, she said, September now, it was September at the time, I put on my fall clothes from last year and the pants are too big. But it's really weird because the scale says the same thing as it did last September because she charts her numbers. Huh, imagine that. The number is still the same, but her body has changed and keeps changing even though the number on the scale isn't moving. So I know for many of us, it's hard not to kind of panic when the scale stops moving in the direction we want it to be moving, but look for other things. Am I building strength? Am I building stamina? Is my body weight moving in my body? And I have to buy new underwear or something because it's changed so much. So please try not to hyper focus on the scale without also checking these other kind of markers of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely, Terry. What you said, I've had it so many times with clients, and they'll say in the same breath, so frustrated, the scale isn't moving, and then they'll literally like 2 seconds goes, oh, but I tell you, those pants that you told me to set aside, like they fit now, and
Mhm.
and then we have to dial it back and say, hey, that's what you're looking for. Like Terry said, it's so many other things, and it's not even maybe our body. I mean, it could be our blood glucose. It's what's going on the inside. So I always tell people, especially those that are, really insulin resistant, pre-diabetic, diabetic, let's look at that improvement because that shows a sign of healing. So sometimes your body goes through different stages. It's healing on the inside, body composition's happening. The scale's not always going to represent that. And I've always said, I don't care what my scale says anymore. I care about what my clothes say, what my waist circumference, all of these other things, body fat percentage. Those are the things you look at, and it takes time to learn that. So you'll all get there if you're sitting there listening to us thinking we're a little crazy.
Well, and I think part of the issue, and I'm probably part of the problem, I'm willing to accept that, is that we talk a lot about weight loss. I certainly spent my whole life wanting weight loss. And so that becomes our singular focus, right? Be like, give me the weight loss. I don't care. I just want that number to move. Even though in reality, when like you guys said, like when we talk to our clients, the scale, sometimes people don't even, really like that's not even at the forefront of their mind. I just want to feel better. My parents, both had diabetes, and I watched what they went through, and that was awful, right? I want to be there for my grandchildren. I want to walk the cobblestone streets of Europe when I retire, right? There are these all these like real life visceral things that don't have anything to do with, kind of how much gravity, right, is being pushed upon the earth, by way of your body, right? I don't really know what like I try to get Matthew there, and it went away from me, guys. Point being that, we do kind of like pull people in with the weight loss. I sure do. I talk about it all the time, but I know from my own personal experience that the scale it becomes irrelevant. Here's how I know, because I got the scale down to a healthy body weight, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't it. That like there were not rainbows and unicorns and the sky didn't open. All of a sudden I had no debt and I had all the friends in the world and I was rich, right? Like we think that it's going to solve every last one of our problems. And we realize that it is not, there is no finish line. Like I really thought, oh, great, I'll be done. You ain't done. What do you mean done? You ain't done till you're done. And so once we accept that this is an infinite game, just like loving our children is an infinite game, right? Just like, exercising is an infinite. We're never done exercising. We're not done eating well. We're not done loving the people we care about. That's what we do until we're done. And so once you recognize that this is a forever thing, then it kind of takes the time pressure away because so often people get themselves so caught up on the scale because they want it done I want it by the time I'm 50, by the time I'm 65, by the time that, Christmas rolls around, whatever, my daughter's wedding, like, and that stress like honestly is counterproductive, right? Here comes the cortisol, here comes the insulin, here we are eating more. So it's not working at us for that way, but also it's this irrelevancy because it's an infinite game and because we will need to do what it takes to get there and then stay there. It doesn't matter how fast that scale moves. What matters is whether or not we transform the way that we approach things, whether or not we institute a regular exercise routine, whether or not we get time restricted eating down, whether or not we figure out the way of eating that works for us. And that's about repetition from here till the days are done. And so if you don't focus on the scale, which is a lagging indicator of success anyway, and rather focus on the inputs necessary for which the scale movement is going to be a foregone conclusion, that's when you've succeeded. Because that's when you're actually putting in the reps that changes your identity. I'm a healthy person that makes healthy choices, as evidenced by how I eat, how I move. That's the real end game. It's not the scale. It is you.
One of the reasons I think that's so important, Heather, is, and I've said this many times recently, getting to a particular number does zilch for keeping you at that number.
Mm.
It's just a blip in the pan, you know? It doesn't do anything to keep you there. But what does is what you were just talking about, Heather, the changing the identity, creating new habits and new decision-making triggers that change things long term rather than just doing them long enough to get to that number. And, we could talk a long time about the difference between kind of diet mentality, which that is a part of. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to eat tuna fish and bananas until I lose 45 more pounds. But what are you going to do the next day? Because you haven't created any lifestyle change. You've only done something that you agreed to do short term versus I think watching people, when I sometimes have clients who are struggling a little bit with some of their outcomes, and what they focus on is, but I'm thinking so much differently. I'm making different decisions. When I go to a restaurant now, I order completely different than I used to order. When I go to a social event, I'm taking food with me, Terri. Yeah. So they're changing how they think, how they kind of gauge their body and their health, and they're creating types of behaviors that when they get to that magic number, whatever it means, that they get to stay there because they've created a lifestyle that supports that. not a, hurry and get there and then slide right back to where you've been before.
Absolutely. I try to get people to slow down on the time. Oh, I need to get there. And they're so frustrated because things aren't going as fast as they would like. And I try to remind people, what are you going to do when you get there? Are you going to go back to doing what you did before? Because I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to get the exact same results and we're going to be back here doing this again. And so I remind them, the goal is to change your lifestyle. You're not going to go back to doing these things. You're still going to eat the healthy foods you're eating now. You may not fast as much. Things may be slightly different, but at the end of the day, you're going to be doing the same thing. So give your body a break, trust the process, and you're going to learn so much along the way. It's going to change the rest of your life, not just this small piece of your life.
That's why I try to use the word transformation any place I can, because I don't want people thinking of this as a diet or a program, because those are time limited. You do them and they're done. But a transformation is an easing into something, working hard in it, and staying in it and continuing to transform even once you're there. Heather, you have not stopped transforming even though you met your weight loss goal. Jill, you've changed health markers and you didn't say, "Oh, I'm done." You're still transforming. And that's a key to this. And again, why I'm probably the least worried about a plateau as most people can be. And probably my clients get frustrated because I know it's not this right here that's going to make or break unless you let it. Sometimes people reach a plateau and freak out and start doing all kinds of things. People change their plan like every couple of days. They're just chasing that number versus build a life.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say, what would y'all do as a tip? So if we're thinking of things for people to think about, and they realize it's been 4 or 6 weeks, a few months, I'm not really seeing any change. I really am being consistent. I did that dive and I feel like I'm doing everything right. What else will we tell people to look at? And I'll start off with one thing, which is hydration and electrolytes is a big part of this. And believe it or not, if you're not getting the right electrolytes and you're not getting enough hydration or going overboard with certain things, your body's also not going to respond very well. We need things in balance. So I always have people take a look at, let's look at your salts and your magnesium, all of these things, and make sure that you're actually doing them. Your body's not struggling because of this electrolyte imbalance. So I'll throw that one out there. Do y'all have any tips of things people can think about when they know they've hit a plateau?
Well, mine might be a little bit more of an investment, because what I have seen is sometimes people grossly overestimate how many carbohydrates they can eat, and still maintain, still lose weight. And sometimes, we have this kind of distorted view of what's healthy without a real understanding of what works for me and my body and my biology and my level of insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. And so oftentimes when I see someone who is struggling with the diet and they're like, I'm fasting, I'm not losing weight, if we don't deduce enough from the from doing dietary tracking, or if they don't do it because they hate it, then I might really encourage someone to wear a continuous glucose monitor, because that has been, in my experience as a coach, one of the things that has garnered some of the biggest breakthroughs for people. Where the most common feedback that I get is, "Oh my God, that was so eye-opening. I didn't realize that fill in the blank food had that effect on my sugar." And some of the things that I've heard is berries and Splenda and quinoa, and like just things that people don't really think of being, it was just okay, right? And it was a whole fat yogurt. Like what? Right? The other thing that I hear them say is, and that put a pause on my weight loss for 4 days. It popped my sugar and kept the weight up for 4 days. It took me that long to recover. So when I see somebody in a plateau, I'm often wondering if that little bit of something is too frequent. like I said, I think people grossly overestimate how frequently they can have these things and still lose weight. People like to hear 1/2 pound to 2 pounds a week, but they don't realize that that's if they are tight and like focused. If they're, kind of having a little bit of something here or there, stops the clock, stops the clock, stops the clock. And if you're stopping the clock twice a week and every time you stop the clock, you're stopping it for 4 days, you aren't going to go anywhere. And that really is very much a you function of what your metabolic disease is looking like. So it's very difficult for someone to tell you how many carbs. I don't know. Like, see what specific carbs are affecting you in what specific way, because it might be more aggressive than you think. So I'm a huge CGM fan.
And I'm going to go my earlier statement about, switch things up a little bit, I think is always a useful experiment. But I'm going to go to something not fasting technically related and not even food technically, is look at the environmental factors, the things going on around you and in you, like how's your sleep? Are you getting good sleep? Has your sleep been disrupted for a while? Um, how is your stress level? Heather, you're famous for saying, stress management is weight management. So, if you're like, oh, my daughter's wedding's coming and we've been planning like crazy for 3 months and work is super stressful right now and we're getting our kitchen remodeled, I would be grateful that I'm in a plateau because that would be a time normally where I would gain 10 pounds and you're not. So look at the other things going on in your life. The other thing I think for some of us, it does bring into question if I feel like I'm really doing well and I've checked all the things Jill said, and I've checked all the things Heather said, and something just doesn't seem to be working. When's the last time I did a good, physical and had an assessment of like my thyroid functioning and things like that? Because we can be doing all the right inputs, but if our body is struggling, it's going to continue to struggle. We're not just suddenly going to make the thyroid start working well. So I always kind of go also with what are the other things? Sleep, stress, the toxins. Do you have Lyme's disease? What's going on? And then also, do you need to have some things assessed medically to make sure that's not holding your body back? Jill, do you want to talk a little bit about the community and some things that are coming up?
Sure, absolutely. So, for those of you that are in our community, glad to see you here. And if you're not, we want to invite you to join. If you want to learn more and you've had a lot of light bulb moments during this conversation or any of our other coaches' quarters, these are the things you learn with the fasting method. So, we want you there to join. We have live community groups every week, like 25. It's included in your membership. So, you get to go there, coaches are there. We don't give, we do not coach in there, but we have a coaching program, and you'll learn a lot more about that when you're in our community. But we want to let you know that our prices are going to be going up. And we've sent out several emails. So if you're on our mailing list, you've received it. But we don't want you to miss out. If you join now, you lock in the lower rates. So the prices are going up October 13th. We are going to send a follow-up email to anyone who registered for this event. So you will receive that email and we'll talk about that. So we don't want you to miss out. Lock in those lower rates. Check us out before it's too late. You'll get those nice rates. And I promise you, it's how I joined. I joined as a community member, got a coach right away, and it went from there. And here I am. And I know Heather, same thing. We were members first, coaching clients, and then changed our lives. And look at us now helping others. So don't miss out on the opportunity. So just wanted to share that.
Thanks.
Yeah, usually I like to start with that, right? Like our background. We're just like right into let's get to plateaus. Yeah, as Jill said, I was a community member. Coach Terri was my coach. I had been trying to fast on my own for about 2 years, right? So I was up and down. I actually did a whole string of OMAD fasting. I thought I was doing great until I wasn't anymore. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't the weight coming off? Why is it coming back on? I'm only eating once a day. And then I joined the community and learned almost immediately what I was doing wrong. And then I hired a coach, and within 6 months, I was down to my healthy body weight. So I had lost like 55 pounds in 6 months. So that is not a guarantee, right? We don't guarantee weight loss in these parts, but there is something to be said about having community and support. And a lot of times, the reason people are in a plateau is because they stop doing it, right? They just wander off, right? And they're not doing the things anymore because they get distracted by life and all the things. And so having support at least ups your odds. It's like a safety net of keeping your head in the game. Maybe not as on point as you need to be to, lose a bunch of weight fast, but at least enough that you're not losing ground and you're not quitting.
Good. All right, I'm going to go through and start sharing some questions and we can answer two that I'm going to kind of combine. Any recommendations for electrolytes besides salt? And I struggle knowing if my electrolytes are balanced. What do you suggest I track? At TFM, we really focus on two electrolytes. We focus on sodium and magnesium. So sodium we get through salt. So salting, putting salt on your food. The less processed food you're eating, you're not getting all that added sodium. So salting your food tastes better. And also salting while you're fasting, really important. And salt is, I call it kind of the umbrella electrolyte. So it helps hold the other ones in place. And then we focus on magnesium. Magnesium is involved in hundreds of processes in the body. And unfortunately, most of our food sources are low in magnesium, so we're often deficient in magnesium. So those are the two we focus on. We actually caution people about potassium because that one is a fine line. Too much or too little is problematic. If your doctor prescribes or tells you should be supplementing with potassium, that's great. We don't encourage potassium. And then the question about what do you track mostly, besides having blood tests that tell you how you feel. Headaches, you need more sodium, you need more magnesium. Muscle cramps, you need more sodium, you need more magnesium. So how you're feeling, remember that hydration is not just having lots of fluid. You can actually wash out all of your electrolytes by flooding yourself with water. It's good amount of water and enough sodium to hold enough electrolytes in. Okay? Either of you want to add anything on that?
Well, I think that sometimes some of us like to use the electrolyte powders that are, kind of in the market. At the fasting method, we like Terry said, we caution about supplementing with potassium. Because Dr. Fung is a nephrologist, and he ain't a fan of overdoing the potassium, and so we try to of course we pass that information along. But there is a level of ease that comes with using electrolyte powders as opposed to putting salt under your tongue and using things like bone broth and unsweetened pickle juice and olive brine and those other fasting friends that we can use. So it really is. I like to say there's not like an absolute right or wrong way when it comes to that. It's a matter of figuring out your life and what will work for you. If you are just really struggling to get salt in and using those powders tend to be something that makes it easier for you, then, right? Like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. On the other hand, would it be better to kind of stick with, right? Like the salts? Maybe, right? Like maybe because you're getting a whole lot of things that are maybe, kind of in higher quantities that you need if you're not, kind of running marathons and stuff, right? There's a lot in that. So I would say, kind of find your way, but the salt is non-negotiable. So one way or another, I know some people use sodium capsules so that they get it. Just be careful about overdoing too much salt at once because it can give you vomiting and diarrhea, which is unpleasant, right?
Yeah.
So, any port in a storm, so to speak, but use your best judgment.
Yep. And on the potassium, just quickly, and we can move on. Our foods, most of the foods that we eat with this way of life are really high in potassium. Everyone thinks that's the banana. No, avocados, highest thing for potassium. I think the majority of us eating a low carb diet eat a lot of that. So most of our foods are rich in potassium because a lot of people get really confused by that. Magnesium, our soil is greatly depleted. We're not getting it from our food the way we should. And of course, sodium, we just need. Yeah, we've got it. We got to have it. So just wanted to throw that out there really quickly for those confused on the potassium.
Very good. All right. I'm gonna jump around a little bit again, maybe try and combine a couple of questions here. People are asking about things like which protocol for this, which protocol for that. One thing I want to highly encourage is that in the TFM community, we have a handout that has like, oh, here's one for example of a protocol, and here who it's best suited for. And every one of us still has to do some experimenting. What works best for your body, regardless of what TFM said would work best for my body, I have to sample it out. So trying to figure that out. Another question there was about what do you mean by rolling 42s? That's a common phrase that you hear often. And when we talk about rolling fast, what we mean is that it's really just alternating days and it doesn't change over the weekend. Some people fast Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whether those days are their 24-hour fast days, so they do just one meal, or whether they're doing 42s and they're not eating anything on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. In a rolling plan, you just kind of keep going. You never change it up. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday. It's just every other day. So just wanted to kind of share that. And then let me see if there's anything more about specific protocols. Someone asked what's the best protocol for thyroid and adrenal issues. Again, this is really going to vary based on the person and their health and all these other things. But the best protocol for those are going to be ones that don't overly stress your system. So we don't recommend people do long fasts if their thyroid is not well functioning. Now that may mean they're on medication and their levels are good. Great. Then we can dial up and do some longer fasts. But if their thyroid is not well regulated at the time, if your adrenals are not well regulated at the time, we're going to have you dial really low on that fasting schedule. We're not going to be having you do 42-hour fast when your adrenals are kind of pooping out. We want you real low, focusing on TRE, proper nutrition, rest, all these other things. So again, it's hard for us to give just one specific answer for if this, then this protocol. You're going to have to do some experimenting and things, but adrenal functioning and thyroid functioning are reasons why we keep the fasting dial set real low until those are well regulated. I'm going to take those questions off. Heather or Jill, if you want to grab another question, maybe.
Yeah, and on that, just real quick, and sometimes I've had clients that have had to pull back on their fasting, and that can be really frustrating, and they're afraid. But it gives you the opportunity to really focus on the food, which I'm going to just double down on that. Like that is going to be critical. And so when you can fast and you have no choice but to make sure that your food serves you and helps you reach your goals, then it gives you the opportunity to practice on what I would consider the most important part. So it might be a feature, not a bug, that longer fasts aren't always available. I have a client that's lost over 50 pounds doing time restricted eating. That is not nothing, right? It's not, well, it's not really fast. Oh, but it is, right? Depending on what you were doing before, do not underestimate the power of, doing, only eating at mealtime and changing your way of eating permanently.
Absolutely. You can't do this way of life without mastering time restricted eating. So,
Yeah. Oh, and somebody asked about CGMs. I am not sponsored by any CGMs, just so y'all know. Coach Andrea, that has worked with us, I asked her what's the best CGM, and she said anyone you can get your hands on, which I think is the best answer I ever heard. The two that are available in the US over the counter that I'm familiar with is the Lingo product and the Stello product. I personally prefer the Stello product, but again, no financial arrangements with them. That's just the one that I happen to use. It's from Dexcom, which is a very trusted glucose monitor brand. That's the the brand I would recommend.
And we have a CGM workshop coming up in October. And I put the link in case anyone wasn't aware and wants to check it out. It's with Megan, and I think Coach Lisa is going to be joining her as well. So you can check out the CGM workshop if you really want to learn more. You have one, but you're not really quite sure what to do with that data. It's going to be a great course for you.
And I love that, Heather, whatever one you can get your hands on, depending on where you're from, you have different access. Some people can go into a store and buy them. In the US, it used to be you could only get them via prescription or a very expensive program that was like $2,000 with other things, versus now you can get them through the mail at a much reduced price. So whatever you can get access to is great. This person asked, do fasting aids like chia seeds stall progress? Typically, no. Fasting aids is a broad topic, and we have some, fasting aids that we usually encourage. If you've been in the community and involved in our 5-day reset fast, that whole fasting regimen is set up on fasting aids, and learning that it's safe to use fasting aids while you're working on this longer fasting goal. Different people call different things fasting aids. Some people are like, well, I ate a steak, so that fasting aid worked pretty well. Well, that's called a meal. But having some chia seeds and some water, that might help with your digestive system, help prevent some side effects when you eventually do break your fast and things, but generally doesn't affect the fast itself. The time that we do like really emphasize water only, water and salt only, is if you have some very specific reasons you're fasting, like you are preventing cancer and have had other medical issues that you're healing or whatnot. Otherwise, using fasting aids, it's like a little blip in time in that length of the fast. Now, if you're having a fasting aid every 10 minutes, might mean you're kind of struggling to get through a fast, but putting a fasting aid in there maybe at lunchtime or at dinner time, and finding ones that work for you versus ones that kind of trigger you. So for example, I do not use bone broth for a fasting aid. For some people, it helps them go on to a 42-hour, a 66-hour. They can do great with it. My brain thinks, oh, we're having soup. Where's the rest of the meal? So you have to kind of learn which fasting aids actually help you keep fasting and which ones kind of stall you out. So that would be my quick response about the fasting aids.
And Isabel asked about exercise. So, of course, caveat, consult your medical provider before you engage in an exercise program. But the general recommendation in the US by CDC is 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise a week, so about 30 minutes a day. That's for everyone, right? Adults. Actually, for weight loss, it's 300 minutes a week, about 60 minutes, most days of the week. And so I want to say that with the caveat that if you're doing nothing, right, like we don't go from 0 to 60 in a week, right? So we start with as small amount as possible, because it's more important to build the habit and sustain it than to go full throttle and then quit after a week because you overdid it and burnt out. And so if you're not exercising, usually a good strategy is do, a minute, 3 minutes, truly the smallest amount. Give yourself a gold star, check done, I did it. And then the next day, find that place that you can do it again. So building the habit is the priority in the beginning. You can optimize it later. So that's how I would recommend building up to that. And I recommend daily walks because I'm a walker, right? And there's a lot of good evidence that we were designed to move that way. But I know we got issues with knees and hips as we get older, and so I would very much encourage you not to let the fact that walking is not on the table for you to get in the way of you not kind of being curious and going down the rabbit hole of a movement program that that can work for you. I mean, they do chair yoga in nursing homes. Okay. So I know that there is something accessible for everyone when it comes to movement. And I would say not, not kind of saying it's off the table for me because I have this one issue and then leaving all of that health on the table. I'm going to be so bold and go so far as to say, if we don't exercise, we're not healthy. And so it's kind of a moot point to do all this fasting and dietary change if we're leaving all the health on the table that comes from movement.
Mic drop. Question about how many grams of carbohydrates do you recommend for a keto that's not strict? I've done 20 grams and it wasn't sustainable for me. Thanks. The reason I wanted to answer this one is because I know this is an annoying answer, but it really depends. There's no magic number. And some of us are not people who are ever testing. So we don't know when I ate that, was I in ketosis or not? We're not measuring. So is it necessary to look at a specific number? Not really. What I encourage instead is to do the experimenting and figure out when I'm eating like this, and maybe it's low enough carb that I can count on both hands how many I eat in one meal with however many meals then I eat in a day. My body feels good, burns body fat, and I'm reaching my goals, then great, you kind of found your range. Or if you're saying, well, when I start sneaking these things in and these things in and these things in, oh, it's not really working. Listen, a lot of people think that TFM is a keto program. We actually are not a keto program. We do encourage people to learn about kind of the carbohydrate threshold per se, of what their body does well with. Megan Ramos, she can eat more carbohydrates than I can eat and do well. My body, I need a little bit lower carbohydrate intake, but it's not a specific number, and I certainly don't panic if I'm 3 over that day. I don't count it. But again, Heather mentioned just eating lower carb, figuring out. And what I always encourage my clients to think about is, what are those carbohydrates? Are they whole foods? Like, can you eat sweet potatoes a couple times a week and your body thrives? Versus, I know that I can't eat ice cream ever and thrive. That's what my body does. So we have to learn that about ourselves. It's not a specific number. And it doesn't, I wish, sometimes some of you have heard me say this before, but I wish we did not even have labels like keto and paleo and this and that, because we get really rigid then often in our thinking, and we get like keto police. That's not keto. You can't eat that. There are tiny little carrots in that bag of lettuce, Terry. That's not keto. Well, I'm doing fine with it. So, they market keto water in the store, and I'm pretty sure that is the same as like high fat water. So I think we need to be careful about just trying to pin it down to an exact thing versus figure out if you're thriving, feeling well, and it feels sustainable and you're getting the results, you found the mark.
Yep.
Our body is not an equation. Our body does not say, oh, that was 29 carbs today. Not doing it. Not going to release any weight. Someone else might eat 75, 80 carbohydrates and their body is thriving there. So please try not to get too caught up on finding that exact number.
Yep, absolutely. It's the ketogenic diet is a diet that puts you into a state of ketosis, and it's different for everyone. We have vegans and vegetarians that are very successful, and they are in ketosis. They check their ketones, and they're eating 75, 80 grams of ketones every day. But they do it, they're not eating the really starchy things, all of these things that are really going to cause these high spikes. So you absolutely can do it. It's not this one number. You don't have to eat under 20 grams to be in ketosis, thank goodness. Everyone's different, though. I do have some clients that do have to go really, really low.
Yeah. Can I just say something really obnoxious? And whoever asked this question, your name is not in front of me anymore. Please know that I'm not being obnoxious toward you specifically, but sustainable is a trigger word for me. And so I just have to speak on that for 1 second. I have heard lots of people, especially in, our dietitian friends, that say following a low carb lifestyle is not sustainable, therefore we shouldn't even try. And that just gets under my skin because high carb dieting is what got us to insulin resistance and, for me, pre-diabetes, for many people, diabetes. And so the only solution that is going to have any possibility of maintaining someone in a healthy metabolic state is going to be reducing carbohydrates from where they were to a place where their body, depending on the level of metabolic dysfunction, is able to sustain. And so that's to Terry's point, right? That doesn't necessarily mean you need to be in ketosis, but that definitely means if what got you to diabetes was 200 grams a day, then that ain't working for you. Lowering that down is a requirement. It is non-negotiable. And so, the sustainability might just mean it's hard. Because it is. It's really hard to eat low carb in a society that's doused in sugar. It is really hard to go out with your friends and have hot bread put in front of your face and say no, thank you. It is really hard to go to a birthday party and not have the cake and ice cream. That's hard. It's not that it's not sustainable, it's that it's hard. And there's difference, and we can do hard things.
And I think in that example, not sustainable might mean my body is struggling. Well, then I need to figure out, does my body need a little more support? Like if I have some thyroid issues, I might need some whole food carbohydrate sprinkled in throughout the week. That's making it sustainable, supporting my body, making it enjoyable. That's a different question. Or making it easy. That's a different question. Absolutely. We can do hard things, folks. I love that. Very good.
We heard that before.
I think we've heard that before. Yeah.
And to that point, Terry, and in case anybody's triggered by me, right? Like, the transition from a high carbohydrate to a lower carbohydrate diet is very uncomfortable, right? The keto flu is what we call it. What really it is, dehydration and losing our electrolytes in the toilet. And so sometimes people are like, oh my God, I feel like I was hit by a truck when I went low carb. I can't do that. That's not something that works for my body. When really it's the only thing that's going to work for your body to get you out of the hole. And it's a matter of, kind of supporting your body through to a lower carb diet than you were used to. So you've got things like your electrolytes tanking because as our insulin comes down, we're peeing them all out. And then we also have the gradient between the where our sugar was and when we go low carb, it can drop down to here. And even if here is still normal, like if we were running at 150 and now we're at 85, that 85 can feel low and can make us shaky. And so we need to kind of give ourselves room to kind of process ourselves into a lower carb diet. There is an acclimation process, much like with fasting, that our body needs to kind of settle into a new fuel source, which is using fat for fuel instead of sugar.
I'm going to highlight something before we go. We do need to wrap up, but we have more questions sitting here. And I'm so sorry, like I said before, we wouldn't be able to get to all of these. Every time I read these questions, it just reminds me of why it's so helpful to be a part of the community, coming to the meetings, using all of the resources. We have more resources than you could possibly ever even look at. Like you could look at them all day, every day and still not be done. So we have the resources, we have all the answers, we have live meetings where we talk about so much of this, and we have coaching. And in coaching, that's where you get the specific answer for you, not the general answer. Because again, when we're talking to 100 people or 70 people in a meeting or 25 people, we have to kind of target a little more general. But when we're working with you in coaching, we have both one-on-one coaching and we have small group coaching, we have accountability coaching, then it's different because then we can talk more specifically to you and what's working for you, what for you to try next versus giving you some general overview. Okay? So I just want to put that out there again. I want to thank Jill and Heather Thank all of you for being here. We love doing these. We'll be back next month. Always lots of good topics and things for us to get to talk about. So take good care. Look forward to seeing you in the community. Today is the day that the most recent Jumpstart program begins. So it's a 3 month. You're in it with us for 3 months, and we kind of walk you through. We have a lesson every 2 weeks, and we have live meetings just for the people in the Jumpstart. So you're not in there necessarily with people who've been, working with us for a while. So if you're interested, come on in. Love to see you. Take good care, everyone.
Bye,
Make good
everybody.
choices.